Hello everyone, my name is Lowko and welcome to another StarCraft 2 video. What I got for you today is not a best of 3, not a best of 5, but a best of 7 series of professional StarCraft 2. This is going to be a Zerg versus Protoss between two of the greatest players in Europe. Spawning here in the bottom right hand corner of game number 1 on Backwater LE and playing with the blue Zerg drones, we have none other than the Italian Zerg who goes by the name of Reynor. And his opponent spawning in the opposite corner, he's playing with the red Protoss probes. He's from France. We are currently looking in the main base of PtitDrogo. Now Drogo, of course, like I mentioned, one of the best Protoss players in Europe. He ended up winning DreamHack Leipzig back in 2016, and ever since then, he's always been one of the highest ranked Protosses in Europe. Now Reynor, on the other hand, he is still one of those players who's got a lot left to prove. Now, as you guys know, if you've been watching this channel regularly, you know that I'm quickly becoming what you can probably consider to be a bit of a Reynor fanboy. I mean, here's the thing. Reynor is becoming better and better and better. Over the last year, he's gone up significantly as far as his skill level goes. And here's the thing. He is only 15 years old. So while he does struggle a little bit when it comes to playing offline events, I think that's one of those things that will go away with experience. And I'm assuming that in the next couple of years, Reynor will grow into one of the greatest players in StarCraft. I mean, obviously, that's you know, one of those things you can not really predict very easily, but this man definitely does have everything in him to become one of the very greatest. So I'm curious to see what the future holds for him. Now, there's no denying that he is going up against a player who's got a ton of experience. Drogo, he's been around for years and years and years, and I actually just quickly looked it up, and I know that pro gamers absolutely hate it whenever I mention their Grandmaster League ranking, because, you know, obviously, a lot of them don't really play ladder a whole lot. Oftentimes, they love practicing in custom games, and they don't really think that, you know, their ladder rank on the GM ladder is as accurate as, for example, their MMR. But currently, Drogo is the rank 12 Grandmaster in Europe, and Reynor is the current rank 16. Now, I don't really know exactly how much both of these players will practice on the ladder compared to, for example, in custom games. Every player out there has got their own little bit of a preference when it comes to, you know, their different kinds of, you know, practice methods. Most of them will do a little bit of both. Some will play only customs, and there are some who indeed will play pretty much exclusively on the ladder. Anyways, before I ramble on about unrelated stuff, it looks like Drogo is opening up with a very, very standard build. Now, rather than going for the Stargate, however, that a lot of Protoss players love playing, he decided to go for a very quick Twilight Council. Now, the thing, of course, is that on this map, oftentimes you can take yourself a pretty easy third base. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe we're going to be seeing like a Dark Shrine follow-up in just a little bit here from Drogo, so he can go for the double Archon drop after the Dark Templar really early on into this game, and then he can quickly transition to, for example, a gold base, or not a gold base, sorry, a third base very quickly afterwards as well. And there we go. Dark Shrine here already going up for Drogo. This is one of those builds that gets played specifically on this map. Right now, the Overlord actually got shot out of the sky here from Reynor as well. Seems like a very small thing, but this does mean that he is mostly in the blind when it comes to this strategy right now. He did not decide to send out another Overlord to watch, for example, the main base either, and that means that Reynor will be forced to play a very defensive Zerg versus Protoss here in the earlier stages of this game. No lair to be seen just yet. Usually we will indeed see, for example, Spore Crawlers going down, maybe a Roach Warren or two, although Reynor, not two Roach Warrens rather, but usually an Evo Chamber or two. But regardless, Reynor is one of those players who loves to go for Zerglings and Banelings in particular. And oftentimes you will see him go for an Evo Chamber much faster than many of the other professional Zerg players out there. So this is gonna be a 4-minute Evo. That's before, obviously, Overlord speed. It is before a lair. It's before any of that, and usually he will focus on melee upgrades really early on here as well. Now at this point, he must realize, hey, wait a second, there is indeed no, and this is really smart, by the way, this is one of those high-level moves. He knows at this point that there is no Oracle flying across. It would have already arrived, so instead he realizes that it's more than likely gonna be something a little bit more aggressive. Now I say that, and Reynor does not quite make Okay, luckily for Reynor here, he does not quite make the Spore in the natural just yet. If these Dark Templar would have moved straight to the natural, I think that Reynor would have been in a little bit of trouble, but apparently Drogo decided to immediately morph those DTs into those Archon as well. And Zerglings, of course, not very good at dealing with the shenanigans whatsoever. Queen's trying to nibble away at these units from a bit of a distance, using that Warp Prism on the high ground as well. But while this is all going on, right, Drogo has already moved a probe over towards the third Nexus location, and indeed, he's going to be able to start that one up very early on. At the same time, though, a second Warp Prism has indeed moved towards the main base right now, too, and that means that Zealots can be warped in very, very easily. Beautiful pickup micro here so far by our Protoss player, and he's really starting to deal some damage here to the Zerg's economy. Drones are now indeed falling on both sides of the map. Another couple of Zealots will now go up here. Actually, oh no, those are not actually Zealots. Those are Dark Templar. A couple of additional units will now go down here for our Zerg player. And Drogo, he's really starting to get a lot of value out of this. I mean, if there's one thing that Dark Templar are very good at, is of course just simply killing a bunch of those juicy drones, as well as of course the Zerglings. And this mostly just comes down to Reynor losing that very first Overlord, to skipping out Pneumatized Carapace, and to essentially lack that scouting information. Drogo, though, just warping it off of just 4 gateways, right? He's finally gonna add on a couple of more, but so far he's really working off of a very small amount of gateways. He's gonna be able to continue onwards with this pressure, and already he's done a solid amount of damage. Now, once again, right, a couple of these units will be taken care of as well, but this is all just Zerglings and Queens trying to deal with an army that is significantly more potent. Now, eventually, though, the War Prism will end up falling, but there's still the one over here located near the third base of the Zerg player as well. And Drogo seems to be in firm control here of game number 1, dealing an awful lot of damage to all of those units. Now, he is a little overextending right now, though. All of these Archons will go down, but this one right here has 31 kills. 32 kills in total. That is ridiculous. Make that 33 while we're at it as well. And Drogo not done just yet. If there's one thing that he's managing so far, it is just simply denying his opponent a lot of that mining time, but also a lot of that drone production. Drogo sitting comfortably at 55 workers here already. He's got a bunch of additional gateways now done as well, so that means that he can continue onwards with his harassment. In the meantime, at home, he has already been chrono boosting out a couple of those Immortals as well. And Immortals, of course, very good against, for example, Roaches. Now, they are nowhere to be seen. I think that Drogo is making the assumption right now that Zerg is gonna go for an all-in. Most of the time, that is going to be indeed based around the Roach. But at this point, I really don't see how Reynor can obtain the victory here. Drogo in firm control of game number 1. It looks like he is gonna go for the final killing blow. Question is, does he have enough stuff right now to pull this off already? He's gonna be able to continuously warp in a lot more units as well. Of course, he can try to micro back a couple of those Archons, but I mean, Reynor does have +1 melee, but he's still stuck on just simply a bunch of Zerglings and Queens. And while the Banelings were desperately trying to connect, the micro of Drogo was just a little bit too good. But the experienced Protoss player here will indeed stand firm and obtain the victory in game number 1. So here's the thing, right? For those of you curious, how did Reynor end up losing there to what was essentially a 4-gate? Well, most of the time, Zerg players are playing with the following mindset. They want to try and get about 80 workers out, with ideally making 0 upgrades and 0 layers and 0 Roach Warrens and all that. Ideally, they try to squeeze out as many workers as they possibly can. Now, oftentimes, of course, you are forced to respond to your opponent. And while Reynor indeed was ready to deal with the double Archons, he was not expecting a second War Prism there. So essentially what happened there was Drogo delayed his third Nexus a little while, even though he was still getting it very quickly. He decided to spend some more resources on getting himself, of course, that second War Prism out, and that caught his opponent way off guard. So smart little move there by Reynor in this particular, or smart little move there right there, rather, by Drogo. In this particular game, though, apparently Reynor has had enough already of that shenanigans. He decides to go for a spawning pool first. Now, no gas to be seen anywhere here for our Zerg, so I'm still making the assumption that an expansion will come up here in just a little bit. Now, Drogo will spot this as well. Question is, will he be able to get the denial right there of the hatchery? It looks like that may very well be the case. And yeah, indeed, Drogo once again being on top of the information here, and that means that he will be able to slow down this expansion for the time being as well. And in the meantime, on the other side of the map, 2 gateways are coming up here. I'm assuming that indeed means that there's going to be a cybercore immediately, and then likely with the follow-up of 2 adepts here very quickly as well. And on this map, I mean, we are on a biogenesis. The pylon did not get cancelled, and this is a big deal. Reynor, once again, in a little bit of trouble. He's now forced to take his 3rd base very late into the game, but apparently, right, Drogo is not done just yet. The Zerglings are now moving across the map, but the probe is still being an absolute nuisance. Reynor decides to turn back around. Another pylon will now indeed be put up at the 3rd base location as well, and Drogo is really not allowing this Zerg player to really catch his breath whatsoever. So that's already a whole lot of Zerglings for a whole lot of nothing. Now keep in mind, Zergling speed isn't started up just yet here either. There was no quick extractor taken here by Reynor, so that puts him at a bit of an awkward position. I mean, he knows right now that there's a chance, and a very good chance at that as well, that there will indeed be a couple of adepts moving across the map. Slow Zerglings can really not fight off a bunch of these adepts as well. Looks like maybe Reynor will try to set up a run by, or maybe try to go for the surround as soon as these units do come in. But at this point, once again, Drogo is the one who is in control of this map. Now, of course, we're still very early on into this match. Reynor is just simply taking another base right now as well. Metabolic boost will be started up as well. But this is what Drogo does oftentimes. He tries to take control. And he gets like that momentum going, right? Here we go, though. Double depths will shade up into the main. He obviously realized the lack of a gas there earlier for the Zerg. He's just simply trying to get a little bit of value here out of units that he made already. And Zerglings, I mean, they're not going to be great at dealing with this either. Putting those units in a great position once again. It does look like the one in the back may very well end up falling, and the shade will indeed force the other one to go back around as well right now. But right, this is what he does. He gets a little bit of momentum going, and then he starts moving onwards. Reynor dealt with a very important scout. He right now checks the main base here of our Protoss player, and he realizes that this is indeed a single assimilator taken right now by our Protoss player in blue only. And that's not really a whole lot. That does mean usually that this is going to be a pretty gateway-focused army. No Stargate follow-ups, no real Twilight Councils until, well, roughly 4 minutes into the game. This is all pretty late as far as the tech goes. And this really does give Reynor the go-ahead to make a whole lot of workers. Obviously, he does need to be careful about, for example, a whole bunch of adepts moving across the map. And with the gateways finishing up right now into warp gates, I wouldn't be surprised to see, indeed, another batch of Zerglings going up. But at this point, Reynor does know that he's going to be free to make a bunch of workers here after this aggression shuts down. Because there's not going to be any follow-up here with, for example, a War Prism or Dark Templar or Immortals or anything along those lines until a little while later. The Zerglings are just simply sitting right now, though. A little bit of an awkward scenario. Reynor was actually assuming that these units would move across the map a little bit faster. I wonder if that means that Drogo is planning... Oh, this is such a smart move as well. Look at that, right? Oh, that was actually really cheeky. He let Reynor scout the Twilight Council. And actually, the Zerglings are trying to get us around right now. But he was trying to let his opponent scout the Twilight Council to make him think that it was going to be a Glaive Adept push instead. But there was no Glaives on their way whatsoever. This is just going to be Adepts, which hit significantly early. And now the Zerglings do get this around. There's no upgrades here for these Zerglings other than the Metabolic Boost upgrade. Still, there's, of course, a lot of Adepts still moving across the map. But I think that Reynor managed to pick up on this rather early on, just by simply having that one Overlord on the high ground to scout out the amount of units that were continuously warped in. That was very cheeky though, right? So Drogo was making it look like it was going to be a Glaive Adept push, which would usually give Zerg a little bit of time to drone up a little bit more, maybe get a Baneling Nest out, but at the very least not make Zerglings or Roaches or whatever just yet. But then Drogo just simply warped in a couple of times and still managed to get a bunch of these Adepts across the map. Reynor though picking up on that rather early on, and he will be able to now transition towards these Roaches as well. Does feel like this is going to be mostly a 2-base all-in though here for our Protoss. I mean, still only sitting on, well, very small amounts of gas. He is going to follow it up with a Dark Shrine right now, as well as a couple of shield batteries. Bunch of gateways here too. Usually, though, the latest we see Protoss players take a third base is going to be roughly, I would say, roughly about 5 minutes into the game. Right now, we're already at the 6-minute mark, and Protoss still hasn't got that third base underway. Zerg already happily mining here off of 3 hatcheries for a little while. Zerglings now, though, once again managed to sniff out the location of these adepts. The shade is off cooldown for a little bit, but I think that Reynor is going to commit. He will be able to get rid of the majority of those adepts, and while it does look like one of them will be able to shade away, the queen picks up the kill, and roaches, in the meantime, are moving across the map. The Dark Shrine, though, looks like it may very well be meant defensively here for the most part. There is still that proxy pylon here on the left-hand side of the map as well. Drogo, though, decided to move out of his natural location. I'm not sure if I agree with that one. At this point, though, you're really looking to have Immortals. Reynor trying to capitalize on the knowledge that this is going to be a predominantly gateway-based army. Beautiful positioning here, though, by our Zerg player. He knows about the fact that there's a good chance that this overlord... Oh my god, look at that. That's perfect, right? Look at that. So the pylon and the probe can't quite see where these overlords are hanging, whereas the overlord knows exactly the location of all of those units. Now, apparently that will force these roaches to go back home. They're gonna finish up these destructible rocks as well, and that means that right now with an Overseer, I think that this army is gonna be very easily scouted. Although the Overseer is actually on the other side of the map, and there's no detection on this side just yet. Yeah, these, oh my god, these Dark Templar could actually turn out to be a bit of a nuisance. Looks like Reynor can indeed see the little shimmer there, and he's going to be able to deal some damage, but there's no denying that the Adepts now also shaded in at the exact same time. Couple of Zerglings trying to prevent additional reinforcements here for the Protoss player to get warped in, but all of a sudden, you blink twice, blinked Adepts and a bunch of Dark Templar arrive in your mineral line, and 18 and 19 drones will go down in just a matter of seconds. Beautiful move there by Drogo, still playing this really, really smartly. Just trying to gain a little bit of momentum in the earlier part of the game and then just simply outsmarting his opponent with all of these solid little tricks. Reynor, though, he's still got a massive army, right? And that's the one thing I'm a little bit worried for. While Reynor's economy was definitely hurt, he still has a lot of units here available as well. And this is going to be a roach-based army that's just about to finish up +1 missile. Here we go. Not that many high-hitting or hard-hitting units, rather, for our Protoss players. Still no Immortal switch. There are indeed now 2 robotics facilities coming up, but Reynor, he's already got so many roaches and ravagers. It is going to be enough. Drogo was forced out of that game, and that means that Reynor just evened up the score. Alrighty, so our next game is gonna be on Neon Violet Square. I would love to see a more late game focused play here from both of these guys. It would actually be really nice to see that, and if there's one map to have a late game on, it is indeed going to be Neon Violet Square. I mean, this is the map where you can easily take, you know, 4 bases, and oftentimes the 5th one and then the 6th one are relatively easy to pick up as well. If there's one thing, though, that I would like to critique upon Reynor's playstyle is that it's very much so focused on, like, the early to mid game. And I feel like the harder opponents you play, right, the higher level of opponents you play, the more you will be forced to transition towards that late game as well. For example, I remember casting the WESG where he had to go up against Maru. Now, Maru, of course, I mean, he's definitely the greatest Terran player on the planet right now. Maru doesn't really allow himself to lose any earlier than, say, 15 minutes into the game, and you could clearly see Reynor struggling against that, because Maru is just so good defensively. He doesn't really miss-micro his units at all. He scouts very effectively with, for example, those Reapers and scans and whatnot. He knows precisely what it is that he's going up against, so oftentimes that does mean that Reynor is going to be forced to play that late game, and I would love to see him practice a little bit more of that, but I'm sure that's something that will come as he matures more as a Zerg player here as well. Now, apparently, though, after evening up the score 1-1, he is ready to play that macro-focused game. He decides to go for the hatchery into a hatchery, all before putting up a spawning pool. Now, in the meantime, on the other side of the map, Drogo going for that very standard Protoss build. This is actually one of the complaints that a lot of Protoss players have, is that they're, you know, as far as their build orders go, pretty much set in one direction. It's pretty much always going to be gateway into a nexus, and maybe if you're on the lower end of the ladder, maybe a forge into a nexus, maybe something along those lines. But there's no denying that Drogo is going to be once again going for a very standard build. Now this time around though, second assimilator does get taken, which opens up the opportunity for once again a Twilight Council, but also for a robotics facility or maybe a Stargate, something I would love to see. And I think that Drogo indeed wants to go for something along those lines as well, as he's now constructing a gateway, or rather a pylon here on the other side of the map already as well. And he's sitting on 150 gas. Here we go. Must be a Stargate. And indeed, Drogo decides to proxy it. Now, it's not going to be that, you know, much of a different push. But the thing is, this is gonna arrive roughly, I would say like 5 to 10 seconds or so earlier than your regular run-of-the-mill Oracle. And that may not seem very significant, but Reynor will indeed time out his Spore Crawlers in a way where this can actually deal a very solid amount of damage. I mean, Oracles, they zap away at those mineral lines very quickly. That can easily mean like 5, 6, 7 kills. And usually after you make this first Stargate, you just sort of make 3, 4 units out of it at most. And you're not going to use it until significantly later on into the game. Plus, on top of this, Reynor's not really defending, or scouting rather, inside of the main base of the Protoss anyway, so he's likely going to be forced to go for these relatively blind spores. Now, he's currently sending a single Zergling all over the map to try and look for this Stargate as well. He's going to eventually find it, but right now, right, it's already being chrono boosted out, and this Oracle is going to spawn at 3:30, roughly around the same time that Zerg will likely go for the spores as well. And I love this as well. At the same time, distracting now with a couple of those adepts, just simply trying to make it so that Zerg is not focused inside of that main base, and that means that this Oracle is indeed heading straight towards the mineral line. Drogo is going to be able to pick up a very solid amount of kills, and I can already see the smile on his face right now, even though I can't see him, but I can imagine the smile on his face as he indeed gets into that mineral line and picks up 4 worker kills for absolutely free. And it's these little tiny things that add up very quickly, because, you know, he ended up losing, sure, 12 HP off of the base there of the Oracle, but that, you know, shield is just simply gonna regenerate. A second Oracle will join in as well, and this just simply means a world of hurt here for our Protoss player. Actually, all of the other Spore Crawlers were cancelled there as well, so now he's sitting on this awkward amount of Zerglings as well. Drogo can go ahead and take the base in the bottom right-hand corner, or just simply expand towards the north, because I think at this point Zerg is planning to go for example, more and more workers. You have 2 options right now if you're a Zerg. Either you're gonna go for that big push, although hold that thought, a couple of Zerglings managed to somehow sneak by that single adept. The adept apparently asleep on the job. It doesn't seem like a significant amount of links, but they're gonna be able to pick units up in just a matter of seconds. Apparently it also will force a lot of the energy out of this Oracle here, which means less harassment on the other side of the map. But really, normally, right, at this point in the game, Zerg has 2 options. Either you go for a big all-in, or you try to play catch-up when it comes to the drone count. And getting a couple of Zerglings into that mineral line really does help Zerg out a ton, because it doesn't seem significant, right? But while this is going on, Drogo is forced to warp in units, and of course, when he's not warping in those units, he would have otherwise made a whole bunch of those probes instead. On top of that, it really did delay the 3rd Nexus. Keep in mind, 5 minutes into the game is usually when we see that base going up. We're already at 5 minutes and 30 seconds, and I don't see a 3rd Nexus anywhere just yet. We do now see the transition, though, towards a Templar Archive and 4 additional gateways. That does give me the idea, and once again, oh my god, are you kidding me? No way! Drogo not having that adept on hold position, looks like he may very well be a little bit distracted during this game, because while he's doing a great job harassing on the other side of the map, this many Zerglings in your mineral line can very quickly get out of control. I mean, that's 9 additional workers there, putting the total up to 12 probe kills. 3rd Nexus, still not to be seen anywhere just yet. Reynor could even go ahead and probably start putting some creep right down on this base as well, if that were to be the case. I think that would be absolutely awful. At the same time, though, it does look like Reynor may very well be forced to deal with an all-in here, and he's already making a lot of Zerglings and Roaches as well. Drogo is now warping in a ton of units. He's going for Archons, Zealots, as well as a whole bunch of other stuff. Keep in mind, he still has all of those gateways done, right? So he's got 6 gates in total. Still no no third Nexus. But Reynor, I mean, he's making so many units here already. And while the Archon indeed find a bit of an angle here inside of that main base, the majority of the Zerg army is now defending against that potential run by here. Now the Zerglings will be able to get the surround on all of those zealots. So that means that the roaches are going to be available inside of that main base instead. One of the Evo chambers ends up falling, but these queens and Zerglings are going to have a very easy time. Now I love this. Drogo trying to see if he can maybe get a solid stasis. He will indeed get rid of a small chunk of that Zerg army, but it's all very insignificant. Reynor holds strong, and while finally a third Nexus goes down now for Drogo, an Overlord is looking above that as well, and he knows about this super late timing. Still, there's no denying that an Adept can deal some damage here. The Warpins can still very quickly turn this game around, but it does look like Reynor may very well just go for an all-out assault to the other side of the map. Well, I say that, and of course, he immediately does turn back around, but there's no denying right now, right, that Zerg is in a, you know, very, very strong position. He has two options. Either he starts droning up right now and just simply goes up to like 70 workers and transition towards that mid game, or he can do what Reynor loves doing and just simply transition towards an all-out mid-game assault. I do like the idea of Drogo not taking this base up north of the natural. Usually, right, you have to be a little careful taking it up there. In particular, if you don't really have much of an army to defend just yet, this is going to be a much easier base to defend, but there's no denying that there are only 4 mineral patches, right? And you don't really get a ton of resources out of this. Here we go, though. Nice force fields, getting rid of a couple of those roaches right from the get-go. Immortals, of course, are going to be great at dealing against this, or dealing with this Zerg army. And of course, right, if Zerg is headbutting up towards the high ground, you're definitely going to be a happy Protoss player if you have force fields at your disposal. Lurker Den are coming up here for Reynor, and there's this weird, like, this is like a new thing. I only realized this a couple of days ago, and I hold that thought. Apparently the Immortals decided to move down the ramp. Not sure if that is the smartest decision, because there's a lot of Zerg still available. Zerglings are trying to get the wraparound right there on that second Immortal as well, and they will indeed be able to kill that one there too. While indeed Reynor did have a plan to go for that switch towards the Lurker, and even though the Lurker then looks a little bit funny, right, he's already got so much value once again, picking up these very high value Protoss units here as well. But look at that, it's so funny. It looks so strange. In the meantime, though, big Warpin once again inside of that main base. Drogo trying to just simply be a bit of a nuisance here. Queens on hold position. One in the front will be transfused several times, and I do think that eventually the War Prism ends up falling, and the Queens and the Hydras will be able to pick up all of those zealots here as well. Drogo not done just yet though, but here's the thing, he really needed this War Prism, right? He planned to go for an assault towards this third base location, and right now instead, he is caught at a bit of a weird angle, because I mean, he planned on probably rerouting that War Prism all the way around towards his main army, and right now, you know, with their tail between their legs, they're gonna be forced to go back home and maybe engage on a bit of a later time instead. But that's not really where you want to be, right? If your aggression gets shut down, Reynor's army will continue to grow. His forces will continue to grow bigger and bigger and bigger. And right now, with that Lurker Den done, right? Sure, Immortals and Archons are very good against Lurkers, but there's really not that many of them. And at this point, I really feel like Reynor can just continuously reinforce this army as well. Psionic Storm is just about to finish up, and I actually do like this. I think that, like, Drogo's best option at this point is either to go for transition, and that's what he's doing, or maybe go for like an all-out attack on the other side of the map, but it's gonna be tricky. Reynor, he's been moving around for a little while. He's finally arrived at 74 drones here too, which is a solid amount if you plan on obtaining the victory, just because you can continuously, you know, reinforce a lot of these armies as well. But here we go, right? Here's that solid set of Lurkers, and it's not that many of them, but they're really gonna be able to zone out the majority of this Protoss army. Still, Drogo has a very scary force. It's not very big in numbers, but storms can definitely turn the tide of battle. 2 decent storms immediately going down. However, 2 Archons already picked off as well, and they are going to be some of the most important units when it comes to dealing with these Lurkers in particular. Now, once again, great force fields, really getting rid of the majority of that Zerg army. The Lurkers will be picked off, and Reynor's army is deflected. PtitDrogo making great use there of the small army that he does have, still warping in more and more zealots, now trying of course to establish that 4-base economy. There we go, beautiful pickup there as well. The warp prison will indeed deflect the majority of those units from getting away, but it's scary though. This is still a very scary army. I mean, the supply counts don't lie, right? If you look at the supply right now, Reynor is very, very far ahead. If Drogo manages to hold on, and I think he needs a couple of shield batteries or something along those lines, he's gonna be in a great position, but I'm still a little bit worried here for this massive Zerg army. Zerg is now gonna instead engage on 2 different angles, right? And while Drogo is trying to catch one part of the army, as soon as he moves his army around, the other chunk of the Zerg force will move forward. So Reynor trying to just simply force his opponent into 2 different angles, and the Protoss army right now is not big enough to pull that one off. Now a massive warp-in was indeed cancelled. As soon as his army moves into the natural, the Zerg forces are moving towards the 4th there of the Protoss too, and Reynor manages to obtain the victory here in game number 3. Alrighty, so our next game is indeed gonna be on Catalyst LE, a much more quote-unquote standard macro map together with, like, for example, Blackpink. A lot of people love playing just standard normal builds on those maps, but there's no denying that oftentimes there is still a little bit of room for cheese if you want to, right? You can always go ahead and pull off something a little bit more cheeky. Now, I was actually a little bit worried there for Reynor, and I really feel like the reason why he ended up being in such a strong mid-game position is just because of those small amount of Zerglings that managed to run into that mineral line twice. Right? If it happened once, maybe Drogo would have been fine, but there were about 12 probes that ended up going down, and it effectively delayed the 3rd base for the Protoss by so much as well. Not a very big fan of how that turned out there, and I feel like it's one of those things that is very easily avoided. But anything that's usually easily avoided is also easily forgotten. You have to make sure that you put your unit on hold position, and on top of that, in the perfect hex as well, because if you don't do so, units will indeed be able to flood in. For example, if you're a Protoss player and you're using like the edge of the map as part of your wall, usually that seems much less reliable. I remember back in StarCraft 1 in particular, there were obviously all kinds of weird ways you could wall off. I'm sure some of you will remember that as well, but walling in as Protoss in StarCraft 1 was quite literally an art form. Like, the way you would need to wall off in every single spawn location on every single map was always determined by a very strict amount of buildings that you would have to put down in very specific locations. And obviously, since there are indeed a lot of 4-player maps, right, in Brood War in particular, you know, players would have to learn how to wall them off in every single scenario and also in the different matchups. Such a tricky way of playing Protoss. These days, it is a little bit easier, but there's no denying that if you make one small mistake, right, then the adept that's supposed to go there or the zealot that's supposed to go there is indeed having a lunch break, the game can indeed go south very, very quickly. Very standard builds though from both players here so far. Reynor deciding to pull all the drones out of the gas, whereas in the meantime, on the other side of the map, we see Drogo just finishing up his 2nd assimilator. This time around, rather than going for the proxy Stargate, he decides to put the Stargate inside of the main base, which I personally really like. This is like literally the most standard build that you can play if you're the Protoss player, okay? So essentially what you do is right after the cybernetics core finishes up, you delay warp gates for a little bit, you get yourself the Stargate going, and obviously you can use the oracles to be both defensive as well as get scouting information, as well as potentially kill a couple of those workers. And the very first adept you make, you use that for scouting information. It's really critical. You confirm whether or not there's a 3rd base up for your Zerg opponent. If there's no 3rd base, usually Protoss will start preparing for, like, for example, an all-out assault. Now, the adept apparently has decided that he wants to, you know, try the waters just a little bit, but obviously you will be able to force a couple more Zerglings out and all that. But he will be able to pick up 1 worker kill and then just simply shade away once again. Now, Drogo, though, upon realizing that indeed it is a very standard build here for our Zerg player, he has now gone for that very quick Phoenix instead. So there's a little bit of variety these days when it comes to your very first Stargate units. Some players love to go for the Phoenix first, in particular if they know they are safe to do so once they scout the 3rd hatchery. But some players still prefer to go for the Oracle-based opener. This seems to be 100% preference Some people decide to not go for any Phoenixes. I'm personally a big advocate of going for at least one, just because killing Overlords is so very critical. Now Reynor, he's already aware of the fact that that Drogo likes to do this as well. Look at that. He's only really sent a single Overlord across the map, and all of the other Overlords are hanging a little bit closer to home, just to make sure that he doesn't lose too much of those supply balloons just yet. Supply balloons! I've never said that before. But hey, I guess it's, you know, I guess it's pretty much exactly what they are. Now, we do see the follow-up once again from Drogo. A couple of gateways are going down, as well as, of course, that Twilight Council and then the robotics facility here, too. This usually, once again, indicates a 5-minute expansion, although I don't really see Drogo taking it so far in this series. He gets them a little while later on. Now, still, the Oracle trying to pick up a couple of kills there. Looks like it managed to get 1 kill so far. Spore Crawler just finishing up here as well. A second worker will now also be killed off. And apparently the third one will go down here too. Drogo getting a nice little bit of value there for his units. But there's no denying that at this point, he is going to be forced to deal with a Zerg player who is making a lot of workers. Reynor is going to use this time to drone up his bases, and you blink twice and all of a sudden he will be at 70 Harvesters. Third Nexus now finally going down in a more standard timing, although the Zerglings have already made their way across. These were forced earlier by just a small amount of adepts, and while indeed Drogo here was looking to go for that third base, instead he's now once again forced to delay that base for a little while longer. Phoenix still flying around trying to pick off whatever it can. Mostly just scouting out what it is the Zerg player is going for. Twilight Council did, of course, just start up the charge upgrade. But the Phoenix just looked at these buildings here and it realizes that indeed the Evo Chamber as well as the Hydralisk Den are a little bit later than you would normally expect them if you are the Protoss player. I wonder if Drogo is just simply, yeah, look at this. He's just simply turning this into an 8-gate. Now, oh my god, this is a big deal. He does not realize he's currently supply blocked. He does not realize he's oh my god, yeah, look at that. That is so bad. He decided to go for a very quick aggressive push there after his base got delayed. And while he was indeed occupied there trying to deal with these Zerglings and all that, he was forced to kill 2 of his own probes just to get the Warp Prism out faster. The entire build here that the Protoss player is going for essentially is dependent on the speed at which this Warp Prism comes out. And Reynor, he's buying so much time to simply being a nuisance here with his army. I think indeed it's going to be a Immortal Archon Zealot Sentry based push. So definitely very scary, right? But Reynor's economy has been growing, and now that he's finished up the droning for the majority of this game, he is gonna be able to start growing that army and delaying that Warp Prism, right? And that's a mistake obviously that the Protoss can avoid. Delaying that Warp Prism is an absolutely humongous deal. Now once again, the Zerglings managed to swoop around. Reynor did not actually force the council there, but he got the kill. And not only did this delay the push, it is also now indeed delaying the expansion once again. Whereas Drogo seemed to be really in top condition there during the first 2 matches of this game in particular. Obviously, he did not end up winning game number 2, but he really did seem strong in that game as well as in game number 1. Right now, he's in a very awkward position, and Reynor seems to be walking all over this French Protoss player. Now still though, this is a scary push. Obviously, you do have to keep in mind that this is going to be an army that can indeed deal a lot of damage. At the same time, Drogo is going to go for the warp in inside of that main base, really forcing this Zerg player to split up part of this army. And here we go. Reynor is indeed going to be forced to defense against a lot of this army, and I love this actually. The force field's mostly just there to try and kill that hatchery as well. In the meantime, in the main base, 12 drones are picked off in just a matter of seconds. The Hydras are trying to push forward, and while it does look like they eventually will be able to force the mass recall there, there's no denying that at this point, Drogo managed to deal a solid amount of damage. Then again, that was practically an all-in. Keep in mind, that third base was indeed delayed, and while Drogo decides to go for it right now, I mean, he's like 3 minutes late on that one, and he's gonna be forced to deal with a massive Zerg counterattack. +1 just finished here for all of those Hydras. They have grooved spines, they have muscular augments. Things like, for example, a stasis ward can indeed delay the advancement right here of the Zerg army, but there's no denying that Reynor is going to be in a very strong push, in particular now that the Warp Prism ended up falling as well. But here we go. That's nicely done there. Reynor is indeed going to be forced to, well, apparently a couple of those units will force themselves through that. Never actually quite seen that before, but now, right, how are you going to defend against this imminent Zerg counterattack here? These units will soon be joining the fight as well. Reynor doing the exact same thing that he did previously too, although he is once again engaging at two different angles at once. This time around, he decided to bring the queens along as well. Beautiful storms though. Drogo really getting a lot of value out of this. Even though he's pulled into two different positions, he's doing a great job dealing with this as well. Now, roaches are coming up here as a follow-up, which I do think is a really smart move. They do not really have their saliva upgrade like you have in the Heart of the Swarm campaign, but they are still going to be great at just simply zoning away this army and giving the Hydras a lot more wiggle room to deal all of their damage. But actually, props to Drogo there. I thought this was going to be the moment where he would lose the game. Instead, he's managed to hold on, and he now secured himself that third base. Reynor, though, it doesn't look like he's done just yet. He is now going for the Lurker Den. Lurker Den just about to finish up. He's gone for a lot of roaches as well as a lot of hydras, once again trying to push into 2 or even 3 different angles at once, making it very difficult to dedicate your storms. And of course, storms on top of roaches, usually not that great anyway. Roaches and hydras microing on both different angles. Storms will go down. The majority of those units, though, will be able to weather the storm as well. And the hydras found an angle now at the third base location. All of the very pricey units of Protoss were picked off, and Reynor makes it so that indeed in the next game he is gonna be on match point. Alrighty, very impressive player so far by Reynor. Not gonna lie, it looked a little bit shaky there in some of the games. I'm not entirely sure about his Spore Crawler timings in particular. Seems like those are a little all over the place. I mean, you may wonder, like, why isn't he just getting it at 330 like most people will do? The thing is, those kind of minor differences really do make up a big chunk of the differences between, like, the top of the line Zergs and then, you know, for example, being a mid-tier Zerg player. Just simply delaying your Roachborn, right? Which I would recommend you get every single time at the 4-minute mark. And delaying your Spore Crawlers, right? Which, once again, I would recommend you get in every single mineral line at 3 minutes and 30 seconds if you're a Zerg player against the Protoss. The thing is, if you're doing that at the top of the line, you're gonna literally give out hundreds and hundreds of resources that your opponent does have available. So Reynor is trying to make sure that he doesn't necessarily grab those buildings as soon as possible, but instead delay them a little while or not get them at all. That way he can, you know, really optimize the amount of workers that he's getting away with. It does look a little bit shaky though. Like if you look at, for example, Sue or Dark or Rogue or any of the real like best Zerg players on the planet, Seror can be in that list as well. You can really see they are extremely decisive. Like, they are really decisive. They will not make a mistake with Spore Crawlers. For example, on Neon Violet, we saw Reynor making spores and then canceling spores and then still making them a little bit later on. That's a sign right there of him being a little indecisive, is unsure what it is that he's going up against. Well, it did work out for him in the end on that map as well. It's one of those things that the top-of-the-line Protoss players will indeed capitalize on quite quickly. But it's minor. Like, these are the kind of things that just simply get fixed by playing a heck of a lot of games, and that seems to be exactly what Reynor is doing. His name is popping up in a lot of these online tournaments. He seems to play a ton of games in general. It's cool to see. It's cool to see him, you know, just simply progress through the different ranks of StarCraft and just slowly but surely making his way to the top. I'm really excited though to see where he's going to be able to go with that. I mean, sometimes players will stall. We've seen that several times in the past as well, where players are indeed up and coming, but then they just sort of reach their max, and it turns out that their max skill level is below that of the absolute best. I mean, part of that is talent, and part of that is just simply, you know, obviously practice, and part of that is obviously also going to be a certain level of intelligence, and you never really know exactly how good a player can become, but I do think that really Reynor has got it in him to become one of the very strongest. Maybe we'll look at this matchup in a year from now, Drogo versus Reynor, and be like, you know what? Reynor was the one who should have crushed that, or maybe Drogo was the one who is supposed to be crushing that one right now. It's hard to call. It's really hard to say. I guess only time will tell. It's one of the things that I love about the esports scenes, though. Just simply following players around for a very long time. Apparently, there was a little bit of a lag spike right there during this game. It's one of the things I love about StarCraft, though, right? So I try and watch a lot of esports. By the way, once again, both players going for pretty normal builds here, but I try and watch a lot of esports. For example, in Hearthstone, I have a hard time following players around because most of the time at tournaments, it's different players every time because the game is so very RNG focused. I love following these storylines and following the same players throughout the years, right? Really see where they're going and where they're coming from and what their skill levels are. And maybe there's going to be another RTS in the future and we can see some of the names carry over to those games too. Excuse me. Drogo, though, he is forced to pull a rabbit out of a hat right now. He's going for a very standard build once again. We're going for the Stargate and now following it up with an Oracle after the Phoenix. That does mean that he's going to be able to go for the robotics facility right here too. And that's likely going to be a very quick follow-up with, once again, a bunch of those Archon. Question is, how much is Drogo going to commit to this push? Will he go for 4 gateways or 8 gateways? How many gates do you think he's going to be going for? Now, Zergling's already scouting the location here of the most likely third. Couple of links, actually, and this is a cheeky little move, right? Reynor making it look as if he only has 4 links out to the map. Instead, he's got a lot more. But they're hiding backwards. So, for example, if 1 Adate would shade forward or 2 Adepts would shade forward and then the 3rd Nexus gets planted, he's going to be able to kill it with the rest of the Zerglings that are still available here too. Drogo trying to pick up a couple of worker kills so far. It does look like he's managed to kill 2. Definitely a manageable amount here for our Zerg player, but it does indeed look like Drogo is planning to go for a much more aggressive version of this attack. And this is the build that I personally love playing whenever I do get Protoss versus Zerg on the ladder myself. Make it look, indeed, as if you're going for a third. So look at this, 5 minutes into the game, Drogo is sending a probe towards the 3rd base. He's making it look as if he's going for a 3rd base, and he might still go for it, but he's got a very powerful follow-up potential here as far as an all-in goes as well. So if this gets cancelled or slowed down or anything along those lines, Drogo is still going to be able to deal a lot of damage. Now Reynor, he's now nibbling away at that cybernetic score. The Adepts will be forced back here as well. Now the 3rd did get planted. This was not actually spotted so far here by... Or actually, no, Reynor did see that one go down. I was going to say, I thought he didn't actually see that that one was already going up. But Drogo, he's going for a big counterattack. This looks like game number 1, right? Where he really went for like a 4-gate all-in off of 2 bases. Well, right now he's going for like a 6-gate off of 3. It's a little bit different, and I wonder if Reynor is going to give this as much respect as it deserves. Because 2 more gateways does definitely make this build a lot more potent. Archons and Zealots, of course, they're very strong. +1 is... No, there's no +1 here for our Protoss, but he did just finish up charge. And here we go. A lot of this army is now moving towards the 3rd base and a big warp in over in the main base of our Zerg player. Nicely done so far here, though, by Reynor. He's going to be able to pick up the units here moving towards the 3rd, but at the same time, right, the Zealots and the Archons are going to town inside of the main base, and this really does give me flashbacks to a, game number 1 of this series. It looks very similar. It isn't quite the same, though, and while a couple of those units are trying to target fire down the Warp Prism, it's not gonna go down here just yet, and that means that Drogo now is in firm control of the main base of our Zerg player, and while indeed a lot of drones are still mining over at the Natural and the 3rd as well, one of the units now even gets lifted up by that one Hydra that was picked up earlier, but Drogo indeed decided to pull a rabbit out of a hat when it was needed. He made a 3rd Nexus, made his opponent think that it was just going to be a standard 4-gate pressure, but instead, Reynor was forced to deal with 6 gates, and Drogo may have very well just started the beginning of a comeback. So this is going to be match point number 2 here for Reynor. PtitDrogo, though, quickly clawing his way back into the game, but I kind of feel like he's winning. Not necessarily through, like, just sheer force of will, but more or less with, like, some builds where you cross your fingers and hope your opponent doesn't scout it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I always feel like this is one of those builds that works very well against a certain level of play. But if you would try, like, for example, if Drogo would try this build against Sue or against, against Dark or Serral, I feel like he would just get crushed. Because this is the one build that is usually relatively easy to scout. You will see, for example, top of the line Zerg players really going in with Overseers a lot more aggressively. They love going for Pneumatized Carapace as well, which is something that I haven't really seen Reynor take just yet in this series, or at the very least not at the same level as they do it. And I really feel like if you would go for a little bit more scouting, once Reynor arrives at Lairtech, he's going to be in a phenomenal position to just simply scout these small Protoss tricks from coming up. And if he knows that it's coming, he can just simply prepare for it as well. Here we go now. Spawning pool once again coming up here for Reynor. He decided to go for the hatch gas pool. Once again, gateway expand here for our Protoss player. Curious to see if he's once again going to sit on one gas or if he decides to follow it up with a second one as well. Usually you would see it go down right about right now. Well, I guess after this Cyber Core is the very latest where we would usually see it. And so far, Drogo is not quite... Okay, there we go. He's going to take it here eventually. I was going to say, we have seen him do some interesting one assimilator-based builds. Considering the fact that he knows that Reynor isn't really going for double Overlord Scouts as much, or at the very least he's not sending one, for example, over there. He could get away with only a single gas here for the most part, but he did decide to take it right there at the standard timing after all. Zerg in the meantime, though. Just simply going for once again the double queens there and then the Zerglings as well. He decided to once more pull the drones off gas. This time around a single drone is still harvesting, but two were indeed pulled off. And that usually is a massive indication to both Zerg as well as Protoss that indeed he's looking to take a third hatchery very early on. Now a couple of Zerglings are gonna sort of like lead the way and clear the path here for this probe. He could still go ahead and put up a pylon if he really wants to delay this for a little while longer, but indeed it is not needed as Reynor will be gifted that third base. Now already a Stargate here is coming up for our Protoss. We see the Warp Gate upgrade now being taken here as well for Drogo, so everything is very, very normal for him right now. This is a very standard macro map, by the way. So remember, Catalyst is one of those maps that's very normal. This is another one of those maps where you can really go ahead and play to your macro heart's content. I mean, you could go for cheese, you could definitely go play late game, but usually this is going to be like a mid-game based kind of map. And that's the one that Reynor usually really shines at. He doesn't really play the late game very often, and while the Overlord is going to explore the main base right now, and he will recognize, hey, wait a second, that it is going to be a Stargate, and he's going to be able to prepare with a couple of Spore Crawlers right now. Both players are really just trying to test the waters. That's really what these kind of builds do. Both players are just simply trying to test the waters, waiting for that Spore Crawler until the perfect moment. On this map, apparently, that's going to be 3 minutes and 30 seconds. But for example, right, he's only getting one in the main base, since he knows that there's only one queen there. And he knows that two queens are going to be available in the natural anyway, so Reynor doesn't really need to rush out another Spore over here. He's likely still going to be getting one, but it's these little tiny things that do add up over time. But really, like, I feel like both players are more or less just testing the waters, trying to see if they can deal a little bit of damage here and there. Looks like a group of larvae there essentially was cancelled, and Reynor already sitting once again at that third base location. So our Zerg did end up losing twice to like an unexpected Warp Prism warp in inside of the main base. We saw that in game 1, we saw it in game number 5. I'm curious to see if Drogo is gonna be pulling that one off once again in this particular game as well. So far though, judging by the amount of gates that he has, I think he's just simply planning to go for a third Nexus here very quickly. Reynor hasn't really shown us any, super aggressive builds anyway. Nice little bit of micro actually right there on that Oracle. Picks up a single one of the queens and micros it back at the perfect moment. So I do think indeed that this is going to be a third Nexus follow-up. Now Zerglings will indeed be spotted, but Drogo immediately puts down 2 robotics facilities. Now the Zerglings though, they're still ready to go. Apparently he's trying to just simply, I think he's planning to try and take this third base by just simply forcing the Zerglings back home. The Adepts now have arrived here, and this is a bit of a very ballsy move by our Protoss player. I mean, these units are super low. One of the Oracles will end up falling. There's not really that much army here to begin with. A lot of Queens dealing some damage here as well, but that's 9 drones very rapidly. At the same time, those Zerglings managed to make their way past that wide open front entrance of the Protoss player, and while 7 probes end up going down there, I think that sort of like evens up the score as well, because a couple of workers were taken here on both sides. I think we can still call that advantage here for the Protoss player, but there's no denying that Zerg is still in a very comfortable spot. Plus, the double robo was just scouted here as well, right? Usually, in particular, right at this location, it's a little bit tricky for a Zerg player to scout that. At this point, he knows that this is going to be the case. Now, I wonder if this is a response right here by Drogo, because he saw that his opponent was gonna go for that heavy, very quick lurker switch, right? This time around, I wouldn't even mind it if we just simply see the good old Hydraling Bane style here from Reynor. So far, he didn't plant down the lurker den just yet. He's gonna sit on Hydras and Zerglings here for the majority of the time. I think that actually Hydraling Bane would be absolutely phenomenal. Now, going for the double robo does indicate for Drogo as well that he's not gonna be able to go for a very quick follow-up with, for example, High Templar and Storm just yet. He just simply doesn't have the gas income until the 3rd Nexus finishes up and you get those double gases going there as well. So he's going to be stuck on like Immortals and a bunch of Gateway units here for the time being. And Zerglings and Hydras are very good against that. I actually think that Banelings would have been a wonderful addition to this army here as well. Now, Reynor has really been making a lot of units already. Only 53 workers at this point. This almost feels a little bit like the old Zerg all-in, where players decided to go for a hyper-aggressive push, and I think that may very well be the reason as to why Reynor isn't taking a Baneling Nest here either. I think he actually might be making himself up for a big push, but Drogo is playing right into his arms. Look at that. Drogo has been chrono boosting out those Warp Prisms and then the Immortals as well. He's gonna go for a big aggressive push, but Reynor is making, you know, he's been making non-stop units for a little while already. Zergling's trying to go for the wraparound. There are so many Hydras ready to go. Look at that. Reynor is setting up for a massive engagement. Zerglings in the back. Majority of the Hydras right here setting themselves up for that 360 surround. Drogo, though, loading the majority of the units up into the Warp Prism. Reynor, while he wanted to go for the engagement, right now he's kind of caught at a weird angle as well, because this is a timing where you know you're going to be very strong as Zerg player for, you know, a little while, but Drogo already ahead is here as far as the economy goes. Once again, though, that warp inside of that main base, Reynor will be forced to deal with that by using his reinforcements. Still, the amount of Hydras that is now moving across the map and the amount of Lings just managed to flood into the main. I think that Reynor is in a phenomenal position to potentially take this game. The Zerglings swooping in that main, absolutely massive deal, because they can turn around and try to go for the surround as well. And all of these units that are currently standing in the natural 3rd base completely undefended. Zerglings are falling left and right, and in the meantime, the warp inside of that main base was indeed cleaned up. Reynor decided to put all of his eggs in one basket, go for one massive Zerg attack with Hydras and just simply Zerglings, upon realizing that it was a double robo-based push, and so far it seems like it is working. 22 probes ended up going down. A couple more will end up falling here at the 3rd base location too, and wow, indeed, we see a lot of casualties on both sides. There is no doubt in my mind that this is gonna go in favor of the Zerg player. Still, Drogo is not out of this game yet, though. Right, he's still got a scary army, but he doesn't really have, you know, for example, Storm. Now, a lot of those units are target firing down the 3rd Nexus. Gotta be careful, you do not want to lose that Nexus. It's absolutely the Protoss' lifeline. Reynor now, though, caught at a bit of a weird angle here as well, trying to move across, trying to shade forward there with those Adepts is Drogo. Beautifully done, really slowing down the retreat there of that Zerg Hydra ball. Really love that. The force field is now catching up with it as well, and Drogo, once again, getting a ton of value there with his units. I love the way that he's controlling the sentries in particular in this series, making sure that he gets a lot of value out of that. Very nicely done. Another Warp Prism now, though, coming up here for Drogo. He is gonna be stuck on mostly. Oh my god! Oh, the Zerglings are trying to get it! Oh, no way! No way! Okay, that's a game-ending move there. If you would have been able to get that, 22 HP. Still, the Zerg is not done. Reynor, I mean, he's made a couple of drones, I think. He's sitting at 49 right now. No, I don't think he, I don't think he's actually made any drones here in the last couple of minutes at all. Zerglings are trying to swoop around. Indeed, Protoss was preoccupied trying to deal with his army, and that means that the Zerglings managed to pick off that base. Reynor once again showing us how good he is in the mid-game of StarCraft 2. And Reynor, I mean, he seems to be in firm control of this. Now, is he going to follow this up with drones, or is he going to follow this up with units? It looks like it's going to be more units, as he effectively just triggered the all-in here for Drogo. Drogo knows he's stuck on 2 bases. He is now remaking the 3rd Nexus, so he's not giving up on the economy game just yet, but he knows that he needs to get something done right now. And here we go. The 360 surround of the Zerg will indeed pick up the Warp Prism immediately. That means no more reinforcements here for our Protoss player in red. And I think that Reynor has done it. The 15-year-old Italian Zerg picks up another victory and therefore becomes the victor of this series in a 4-2 fashion. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you did, make sure you hit that like button down below. And if you want to see more, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you get a notification as soon as I upload more. Other than that, I want to thank you for watching. Have an amazing day, okay? Do not forget to smile, and I'll see you in the next one.